Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for Science Education on a Budget. We are so excited to dive into this conversation today. We're joined by two amazing presenters. We'll get into that in just a moment. But while we're letting people kind of get comfortable and settle into the Zoom room, I would love to direct you to your Zoom window. At the bottom of the window, you'll see what looks like a little chat bubble. If you click that, you'll be able to pull up the chat of the Zoom. That is where we'll be taking questions today. And when you drop a question into the chat, please make sure that little to section, it should be highlighted blue, make sure that's set to everyone. We specifically ask this for two reasons. One, so that we are doing some knowledge sharing. Probably somebody has a question similar to yours, and we're making sure that we are supporting each other and building that community. We also ask that you set your chat to everyone so that we don't look like we're talking to ourselves when we answer your questions. So please make sure you set it to everyone. To practice the skill, go ahead and open chat and let me know how far you are out from starting school or if you're already in school. So are you still in preparation phase? Are you in it? Let's see. Abigail is going back September 4th. First week back next Wednesday for Jack. 2 weeks in, you got this.
Boy.
Allie's also 2 weeks out. Wow. Man, everyone is dropping them in. Okay, teachers back yesterday, students back next Thursday, August 25th. Some folks have been in school for a week. Very nice. Well, welcome back and or happy end of the summer. I do want to make sure we're making the most of our time today. So quick before we hop into the presentation, I have just a few housekeeping items. If we can go to the next slide.
There we go.
Beautiful. You will get a recording of today's webinar. It usually takes us about 3 to 5 business days to get that edited, but as soon as it's ready, we're going to pop it on both our YouTube channel and our website. Both of those are linked there. You are also going to get an email with that recording in it. In that email, you will not only get a link to the recording, but you're also going to get a link to our resources folder. I'm going to drop the link to that in the chat in just a moment. Inside that folder, you can get a certificate of attendance if you're using this for professional development hours. You can also find our presentation. As I mentioned earlier, these are clickable links and you'll find a lot of good resources in that presentation. So make sure you grab that link from the chat. Otherwise, you will get it emailed to you. We would love to answer your questions today, so please make sure you drop your questions in the chat. Like I said, please just make sure that you're setting your chat to everyone so that we can knowledge share. If we happen to miss your question or you have follow-up questions or you just think of something tomorrow, we are available. You can definitely reach out to us. Shoot us an email at physics@vernier.com. That being said, I will pass you off to today's presenters. Please stick around to the end of the presentation because I am doing a giveaway, but I'm only drawing from people who are still in the Zoom room at the end of the webinar. All right, Josh, take it away.
Thanks, Dylan. One thing I'll note there, that physics@vernier.com email address, that's probably the easiest way to get a hold of myself. If you have chemistry questions, you can also email chemistry@vernier.com, or if you have biology questions, biology@vernier.com. That also works as well. My name is Josh. I work for Vernier. I'm joined by Nick. He's a semi-local teacher. We'll introduce ourselves in a minute, and I kind of want to get a sense for who you are as well. That helps us as we talk through things here, helps us kind of understand where you're coming from and what sort of things you might be interested in. The big idea behind our webinar today is how do you make the most of the budget that you have? And we are a science education company. Our big thing is like hands-on science education. And so we'd really love you to buy these probes and sensors, you know. Well, we understand that like budgets are limited, especially like right now. It feels like funding is a little uncertain. We don't really know what's going to happen. So you're probably thinking about, well, what's the way I can take the devices I have or the limited budget that I do have, how do I make the most out of it? So we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk primarily about using versatile tools that you might use across disciplines or throughout the whole year. We'll talk about some ways that you might change your labs and demos to make them a little more hands-on, or but make use of the stuff that you have, and then also places where you might find additional funding. There will be, like Dylan mentioned, please drop questions in the chat as we go through this. I'll be answering those questions. Nick will be answering those questions. At the end, we'll have some time for question and answer as well, and we'll go from there. So just by way of background, like I mentioned, I work here at Vernier. I have been at Vernier for about 11 years. I do a lot of things like teacher trainings and teacher support. If you call or email, like you email physics@vernier.com, you're likely to get myself. Prior to working at Vernier, I was a high school physics and engineering teacher in Northern Virginia. Um, I really liked teaching. I really liked doing hands-on activities. I found that it was a great way for my students to learn. I really loved being outside. I liked riding bikes and running and swimming and like hiking. And anyway, I have 4 kids, and one of my greatest, one of those little tender mercies is they also like being outside. So we often as a family go camping and have adventures outside. I'm joined by Nick. Nick is a local, well, semi-local teacher. He's just up the road in Tacoma.
Mhm.
You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Yeah, as I said, my name's Nick. I'm primarily a physics teacher, but I also teach physical science, and this will be actually my first year teaching forensic science as well. This is going to be year 13 for me. I'm also part of the Vernier Trendsetter program, which I'm sure Dylan will talk a little bit about at some point. I got my national board certification in physics. I have 3 boys, a 5-year-old, 3-year-old, and a newborn. So right now I'm really excited for our professional development week next week, because that just means I get to sit in an air-conditioned room with some coffee, and just have my body to myself, which will be exciting.
Those are busy years. All right. So the way I'm going to talk a little bit first about our probes and sensors and our software, and kind of talk about how you ones that you might use with multiple classes, multiple like courses, that sort of thing. Ones that you're going to use throughout the entire year, and then I'll transition and hand things off to Nick to talk a little bit more about like how you might adapt your labs and your curriculum and where you might find additional funding. Before we get to that, let's have we're going to pop up some survey questions. I'm kind of curious to know a little bit about you, what grades you're teaching, what subjects, whether you already have some Vernier probes, whether your science department has a budget that you guys like get together and spend, or whether each individual teacher has your own budget. I had about $200 a year. That was like my discretionary budget, and I had things I would spend on it. But I also knew that I always kept a stack of POs that were ready to go, so that when my department chair said, "We've got $500 we need to spend," I can just say, "Here you go." How about you, Nick? Do you have is each teacher, or is it just
Mhm.
as a department?
We actually have a negative budget at our school, which is
Oh,
part of
great.
why I'm, leading this webinar. No, but I think what I've been able to do is like go into the deep closets of our science room and find new lab equipment that
Mhm.
some could be repurposed, some just needs to be thrown out. Um, but I would say no, and I, I would say I've just learned to become a lot more efficient and proficient in the equipment that we already have. Um, yeah, and hopefully we'll get
Yeah.
funding
Yeah.
eventually.
I found I remember when I was teaching, I was digging around and I found some old force sensors from like the mid 90s, and I
Mhm.
managed to get them working. Turned out really well. They were kind of odd. The kids looked at them like it was like a rotary phone or something like that. Like, what the heck is this thing? But we got it done.
Yeah.
It looks like, all right, it looks like we got some Vernier users here that are into it. I'm glad to see people are using our stuff. Um, Okay, interesting. It seems like that by and large, well, of our attendees here, it's like the department has a budget. We have mostly high school teachers. a couple from middle school. You're doing the Lord's work out there teaching middle school. It's a different kind of beast. And
Yep.
we're pretty evenly spread. It looks like physics and chemistry, well, it looks like, yeah, might be the most, or I guess physics is tied with physical science. Well, I'm a physics guy, physics engineering. Nick's also a physics guy. Sorry about that. Nevertheless, I asked our chemistry and biology teachers a little bit. If you do have questions that we can't answer, like I said, you can email me at physicsfornear.com, or you can email biology or chemistry at vernier.com as well for additional questions. Great. Thank you all. Let's talk a little bit about some of our tools that we use that are versatile enough that they're the kinds of things you can use year round and are probably worth investing in. So for instance, we have an app called Graphical Analysis. It's available in 2 flavors. There's if you just download it from our website, you're getting the basic or free version. It's great. You can use it for data collection with our probes, but then you can also just use it to graph things out. You can manually enter data and graph it out yourself. The Pro version adds a couple of features that are actually pretty good if you're on a limited budget, right? You have to pay, obviously, for a license for a Pro license, but there's some really great things that you can do. So for instance, if you're doing a demo and you want the students to have the demo that you're collecting from that demo, you can use Graphical Analysis Pro. Makes it really easy to share that data out. You basically put up a code. The students put that code into graphical analysis, and then when you hit collect, they see the data come in just like you do. Another place that you might see is we have a number of sample experiments kind of already in Graphical Analysis Pro. There are videos with data, and so it's kind of like the data collection portion of the lab is done, and if you want, you can just go and you can have your students do that as the analysis and write-up on their own. It's great, especially if students miss miss a lab day and you want to make it up. You can also send them those sample experiments. I'm going to show you real quick. I have graphical analysis open here in a separate tab. There are a couple of different places. You can download it and install it, but kind of like a popular way to use these days is what's called a progressive web app. This is just within the browser window. It's just loaded in here. You can see that the address is just graphicalanalysis.app. I'm going to show you one of those sample videos, or one of those sample experiments. I'm going to go, I already have Graphical Analysis Pro unlocked on this, in this copy of Graphical Analysis. And I'm going to choose the sample experiments here, and it's going to bring up a list. I'm going to scroll down to my physics stuff because that's where I feel comfortable. And I'm going to choose this air resistance lab. And you'll see that I get data, and I also get a video. And if I want, I can play that video. Actually, I'm going to make this window a little bit bigger so you can see. I can play that video, and it just kind of gives me a sense for what happened. Where did this data come from? Well, that's a motion detector. We're just dropping a coffee filter beneath it. And if I want, though, I can replay the data. I can have it replay the data with the video. That's a pro feature. It's this kind of like replay option here in the upper right. And if you replay it there, then you get both the video and the data happening at the same time, which can be really cool. That is advantageous if you want to kind of get a sense for like what happened when. This is also great for, there are some biology labs that take, you have an hour of data collection, and if you want to speed it up, you can replay it at a higher speed. Some physics labs happen in just, like 5 seconds, and you want to slow it down, you can do that as well. If you click on a portion of the graph, you can see that the video is synced to it, so I can kind of see what's happening at each place along the graph here. This is one of those little features that's nice to have and really makes it worthwhile. It gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of how you deliver a lab and when you deliver a lab. So that's something to consider. one of the things I want to point out to you in the slide deck a little later down is we have a Graphical Analysis Pro license key that you can use. So on this slide here, you'll see the last bullet is, this is the license key itself. When you open Graphical Analysis, you can enter that license key and it will unlock those pro features. That means that you can get to those sample videos. You could do that data sharing and so on. Another app that I want to show you about that you can use a lot for many times throughout the whole year is Vernier Video Analysis. This is really more physics specific. I love Vernier Video Analysis. You can use it for all sorts of things. The kind of like the killer app, the thing that people really draws people to Vernier Video Analysis is projectile motion, because you take a video and you can track the motion of an object, and then you can like talk about the rules of projectile motion. But you really can use it for all sorts of things. So I'm going to show you, this is Vernier Video Analysis. It also just runs within the browser window. I go into videoanalysis.app. Like with the Graphical Analysis Pro, I put a license key in this slide deck here. You can go and grab that if you'd like. Vernier Video Analysis runs entirely within the browser. So you really can just click on this link and it opens it up in a new tab and do your analysis there. I'm going to go over here. I did some data collection before here just so that we could say, just so I can speed along here. You're not watching me just collect the data. You can see that this is Joel. He's a local physics teacher. He's just shooting a basketball there. And I get some projectile motion. I get a graph here that shows horizontal and vertical position with time. If I want, I'm going to look at just the vertical position. And if you want, you can do like a curve fit, all the same analysis tools that you see in graphical analysis are also available in Vernier Video Analysis. But what I want to show you here is that I took my position and velocity data and I transformed it, and now I have also gravitational potential energy, kinetic energy, and total mechanical energy. My gravitational potential energy is just comes from the y position, the height of the ball, and it's just, I just did the mass times g times that height to get that gravitational potential energy. The kinetic energy, it comes from the velocity. So I've got 1/2 times the mass times the velocity squared. And the mechanical energy is just what you'd think it, I don't want to delete it. It's just what you'd expect to do. It's just kinetic plus gravitational. And what's great about that is that I can go and I can plot those things. Here's my gravitational potential energy. It looks a lot like the height. Well, that's not too surprising. Here is my kinetic energy. 1/2 times the mass times the velocity squared. You can see it. Those two look like they're almost somehow related. And if I plot total mechanical energy, I can see that it's pretty constant. As I move along here, I can see that my gravitational potential energy is increasing and my kinetic energy is decreasing. And then as I pass the top of my parabola, those two go in the opposite direction. And I can see it is interesting. It makes me wonder, like, I end with a little bit less total energy than I began with. Is that air resistance, removing energy from the system? Anyway, I just want to show you, a lot of folks see Vernier Video Analysis as a tool for doing projectile motion. You can do projectile motion, but you can do a lot more. You can do conservation laws and angular momentum, all sorts of stuff. We have 2 books written specifically for this app. One is called Sports in Motion, and the other one is called Conservation Laws and Forces. And between those 2 books, you got 24 labs that would take up 3/4 of a high school physics, first-year physics course.
We have a good question in chat. Paula is wondering if analysis can be used with older vernier probes that are not wireless and have to connect via the LabQuest Mini.
Yes, Paula, great question. The answer to that question is yes. So our vernier graphical analysis will work with our newer GoDirect probes. Those are ones that are the wireless, USB ones. They'll also work with our older wired, what we would call a LabQuest sensor these days, one that has that white flat connector that plugs into a LabQuest 1, 2, or 3 or a LabQuest Mini. You'll find that graphical analysis serves the same purpose as Logger Pro. So you'd plug your probes into your LabQuest Mini, you'd take your Mini and you'd plug it into your computer or Chromebook and pull up graphical analysis. It'll recognize the probes that are connected and you'll be able to jump in and start collecting data just like you would with Logger Pro.
Mhm.
Let's talk. So that's kind of like this software. If you choose to purchase either Graphical Analysis Pro or Vernier Video Analysis, they're sold as a site license, which means you just buy one license and it's good for the whole school. So the way it works is you get a license key and you share that key with the other teachers and students that want to use the app. And then they use that key to, in Pro, it unlocks the Pro features from the graphical analysis app that they download and install. For Vernier Video Analysis, that kind of unlocks the app so that you can use it. Nick showed has a picture here. If you only have one probe, you can project this up here on the board really well, and you can do kind of classroom data collection the same sort of way.
Yeah, Josh, can I jump in here real quick?
Sure, yeah.
I think especially from a funding perspective, when you're trying to go to your district and say like, hey, it would be great for us to have these site licenses. I think it's a little bit progressive, especially if you have to like make an argument. What's nice about the graphical analysis free version is you can use it with any of the probes, right? The wired probes or the wireless, but you can also just use it as a standalone manual data entry. So like for departments that are mostly using Excel to, graph all lab data or just graphing it by hand, it's nice to kind of make a transition to graphical analysis, just because you have a lot more tools to do that analysis, and you're just kind of teaching students some more skills. And then if you can get your whole department on board using graphical analysis, then making the jump to funding Graphical Analysis Pro is a little more realistic, versus just kind of going in and kind of cold calling your district. And I think that's really kind of the best path to success for funding these software items is trying to get your whole department on board versus just coming in as like an individual teacher where it's like, hey, I really like to use this. Can we get a site license? The site license isn't really as effective if it's just one teacher using it. But if it's your whole building using it, I feel like that's a much easier sell.
Yeah, indeed. Let's talk a little bit about the probes themselves. So some probes are going to be a little more versatile than others in the sense that, one, they might be used from one class to the other. Like for instance, a temperature probe you're going to use in physics, chemistry, and biology. Your physics folks are probably going to use it at the end of the year, maybe when they're talking about thermodynamics and that sort of thing. Your chemistry and biology instructors are going to be using them throughout the year. Likewise, gas pressure is another popular one, pH. The biology chemistry folks really like the spectrometers. We make a spectrometer called GoDirect SpectraViz Plus. It's a really great tool. It's very versatile. You can use it for all sorts of things. It's kind of a pricier one. When people ask me about probes and how many can I get, the usually it's about $100 for a probe. The SpectraViz Plus is about $400, so it's quite a bit more expensive. And so one thing that they'll do is instead of buying spectrometers for each of their lab groups, they'll buy one spectrometer to kind of show as the kind of like the class one. They'll use that to collect data for everyone. And then for individual lab groups, they'll use a colorimeter where it's like a spectrometer, but it's only got 4 wavelengths that it can illuminate at rather than the whole spectrum the way the spectrometer can. You might also think about there are some probes that you're likely to use many times throughout the whole year. There are some, like one-trick ponies. We sell a diffraction apparatus that's really only good for one, your light and color unit in a physics class. But these Go Direct sensor carts, they're really great. These you can use as a physics teacher. You could use this for 3/4 of the year. You can talk about kinematics and dynamics with this. You can talk about conservation laws, all sorts of stuff. It's really great. Likewise, temperature probes, you're going to use all throughout the year. The spectrometers, the colorimeters, they are using a lot of different, they're using a whole lot of different of units of study. And so they're also ones that are kind of like really high value. You get a lot of use out of them because you're going to use it throughout the whole year. All right. Nick put some great pictures in here of his physics students using gas pressure sensors. AP Physics 1 now includes fluid dynamics and fluid mechanics, and it's we have a lot more requests for gas pressure sensors from the physics folks than we once did. Looks like there's a question here about if there's a discount, if you're the only person, if you are the whole only, you are the science department, right? We do. I don't know that I don't know a ton about the discounts that we have to offer. I do know that if you are purchasing some stuff, and it never hurts to ask. We often have our front office staff often has a little bit of wiggle room and like the kinds of discounts and that sort of thing as they give. So that's definitely something to ask. We'll talk a little bit. I'll transition to that right now. Some other things that you might consider, here are some other ways that, we've got sensors that are going to be used all year long. Nick's provided some great examples here, and that sort of thing. I'm going to jump ahead real quick and talk a little bit about some things you might consider. I was at the AAPT summer meeting last week, and I talked to someone. I was so surprised. They told me that they had purchased Graphical Analysis Pro and Vernier Video Analysis, and they had actually had their IT budget pay for that. That was that's pretty cool. In the grand scheme of things, Graphical Analysis Pro and Vernier Video Analysis are relatively inexpensive compared to the other kind of software that your school is likely purchasing. If they purchase a subscription to like Microsoft Office, it's a whole order of magnitude more expensive than our apps. And if you ask your IT people, like, this is the software that we use a lot, can you pay for it rather than out of our science budget? They might say no at first, but when you tell them how much it actually is, it can be pretty, they might say, oh, that'd be easy. Another thing to consider is, especially if there's some stuff you want to get, you're talking to the other people in your science department, you might talk to your district science coordinator, because if there are other teachers at other schools that are also looking to purchase things, making one big district purchase often is a way to kind of get more of those discounts. I know the front office tends to do discounts when it comes to volume, and so if you can partner up with other teachers at other schools to do one big district purchase, you're likely to get a bigger discount that way. We have a couple of folks that are our K-12 outreach team that are like, especially if you're thinking about this, and talk to them because they might be already talking to somebody at your district. We have a lot of labs written for our probes and sensors. They're compiled in books like Physics with Vernier. I mentioned before, there are those 2 video analysis books. It may be that if you already have Vernier probes and sensors, it's likely that those books were purchased sometime in the past. And it may be that the teacher that purchased those moved on with those lab books. but the license for those books stays with the school. And so if you create an account on our website and use your school email address, and maybe you'll find that, whoa, there are already these books available to us, you know. Sometimes people come and they want to purchase a book from us, and we look it up and then we find that their school already owns that book, you know. And so rather than take your money, we just give you the ebook version of that lab book. And then the last part is sometimes folks are hesitant to make a purchase, especially if you're trying to convince your colleagues to go in on some probes and sensors. They may be hesitant because they're like, well, yeah, this is cool, but I don't know that I'm ever going to use it. You know, it's too hard. I don't know how to use it. I don't really have the time to figure it out. We have a lot of opportunities for professional development. The easiest and quickest ones, or we do 1-hour Zoom trainings all the time. Folks that, you know, it may be like, I just did one earlier this week, somebody that wanted to get a little bit of a hands-on tutorial about how to use photo gates. You know, they had some photo gates. They're kind of tricky sometimes to set them up the way they want them to. And so they signed up for a free 1-hour Zoom training. And that was great. You know, we can do this sort of thing all the time. So if you do purchase them, you know, you can set up individual trainings for the people that will be using them. You can set up a 1-hour training that's for like the whole department, like during a prep period. We can walk you through the basics so that you have a place to start, and then have follow-up trainings after that to kind of just more subject-specific ones or for particular labs or probes. We do recognize that the probes and the sensors, they're not cheap. You know, it represents a significant investment, and we want to make sure you get the most out of them. And that also applies if your school in the past has purchased a bunch of stuff and you know it's in the closet, but you're not sure how to use it. Sign up for like a free 1-hour Zoom training, and we can get you going. Is there anything you'd add to that, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, if you go to the previous slide.
Yeah.
I'm
Maybe
sorry, I guess the
this
one with
one?
the, yeah, perfect. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like the other thing too is if you're going from a situation where you have no probes, right, and you want to start teaching with probes, you know, it's a big jump to go from like, okay, we want class sets of, you know, these 5 different probes to do these traditional labs that we've done before. You know, if you have the budget for that, that's awesome. Most people don't. I think where I started is we got a one-time grant where we were able to get a package of basically like one of each sensor. So it wasn't a class set, and it just kind of forced us to be really creative in how we use them. And I think this is also where you can kind of take advantage of what your school already has. A lot of people have, yeah, speaking to the physics teachers, a lot of the old crash carts, you know, some of them are the plastic versions, some of them are wooden versions. It's really easy to just take one of those sensors and just plop it right on top. And then now all of a sudden you have a smart cart. You have to be a little more picky. I think Josh has one of the smart carts with him. The smart carts are great because they're kind of an all-in-one sensor for motion, for momentum, for impulse, for force. They're accelerometers. There's a ton that you can do with just one cart, you know, not to mention having, you know, 3 or 4 of them. Yeah, and like I said, just being a little more creative in how we use them. I think we'll kind of talk a little bit more about you know, maybe not using them in the traditional sense. You can kind of see one of the pictures here. We talked about force and momentum. I took one of our accelerometers. The nice part about the wireless ones is you have a lot more flexibility. Stuck it into a little foam head and, you know, kind of created a little fake baby, put it in a car seat, and we're able to use that to kind of explain Newton's laws with car seat safety. I don't want to get on too many tangents, but yeah, there's just a lot of different creative
Yeah.
ways that you can make use of just one sensor versus, you know, having that expectation of like, okay, if we're going to do this, we need to purchase a whole class set, which just is not going to be the reality for most schools.
Yeah. If you do get to the point where you are ready for to make a purchase, and you have a limited budget and you're like, what can I do with this? Feel free to reach out to that email address, or we have a little chat bubble on or give us a call. we're happy to talk you through all the options and what's the best way to make use of the budget that you do have, or to make use of the probes and sensors that you already have. Sometimes you've got older stuff and you kind of want to get the newer stuff, and graphical analysis these days really does make it easy to mix and match, you know. I'm going to point you one last time to this is this license key. It's good through October 17th. You can just copy and paste that into graphical analysis. If you already have graphical analysis on your device, if you go to the three-dot menu and then you choose About, there's a place where you can enter your license key. If it's the first time you're launching graphical analysis, there's a place right on that launch screen where you can plug it in. So that's good until October 17th. And then the same with this Vernier video analysis license key. It's also good through October 17th. I put in the folder where you find this slide deck, you'll also find a folder that says Sample Video Analysis Lab. And it has a couple of things in there. This first weird file is actually this video analysis that I did here. It's got the video plus the analysis on top of it. And then I have a lab in here, an energy and simple harmonic motion lab. There's a student version, there's an instructor notes and information, and then there's the videos that go with that lab. So if you want to try that out and you want to talk about energy you want to kind of see what that's like, there's a good place. These links, these license keys for both graphical analysis and video analysis, you're welcome to share with your colleagues. You're welcome to use them with your students as well. That you'll need to, especially if you're going to do Vernier video analysis. This link is what you'll want to share with them, because that then will work for each of your students, and you could do a projectile motion lab, or you could do, you know. So like I said, they're good until October 17th. You're welcome to share them with fellow teachers and with your students. All right, well, let's switch gears in a little bit. We're next going to talk a little bit about kind of like ways to change your lab a little bit to accommodate, you know, what maybe you only have a couple of probes.
Yeah, so yeah, like I spoke a little bit about this before, but I would say, yeah, if you're in a position where, you know, we're trying to step into upgrading our lab equipment, you know, maybe we get one of each probe to kind of see what's going to work for us. You know, obviously you're not going to be able to run it like a traditional lab where, you know, students break into group of 4 and everyone has their own sensor, what have you. So some creative ways I kind of gotten around that. For those of you guys who are physics teachers, you know, if you do, you know, a constant velocity lab, you have those constant velocity cars, you know, one of the first few weeks of school, you do your constant velocity lab where students are trying to figure out what is the velocity of that car. If you have one motion detector, one easy way to kind of use that is you kind of use it as an answer key, right? So, you know, students can go through however many trials they're going to go through to, you know, figure out the velocity of that car. You know, at the end, when they're coming to you, it's like, okay, this is how fast we think the car is moving. You know, you just plop it right in front of the motion detector, show them on your iPad or your computer or project on the screen. And, you know, then you kind of compare. It's like, okay, well, it's like, this is what the motion detector says. We can do a couple trials with it just to make sure, but usually the error is pretty accurate. It's like, okay, you know, it's like, use that as your answer key. You know, another way that I've used them, you know, is kind of taking advantage of some of our existing equipment. You know, kind of saw with our crash carts. A lot of them come with different attachments, so you can put your sensors on top of them in order to use it. And then also, especially with the wireless probes, it does give you some more options for kind of getting outside. We have like one photo gate, which by itself is not super useful. The photo gates are great when you have multiple of them. But you know, every year we do like a bottle rocket lab where we kind of compare, you know, empty bottles versus bottles filled with water. Able to just, you know, put one of the fins right next to one of the photo gates, launch it, and then that opens up a whole, you know, huge opportunity to talk about initial velocity, which, you know, gets students talking, and just opens the door to, I would say, like a lot more data that they wouldn't normally have access to, or it'd be a little harder to get. On here, it also talks about station labs. So again, if students are just going to do kind of a lab that you've done traditionally, you know, if one station is, you know, collecting data with, you know, your analog tools, maybe one station is, if you have that one sensor, you're standing with that sensor, you already have it connected to your computer, your iPad, you kind of run that station, have students collect the data with the sensor with you there, especially if you are, maybe a middle school teacher or, a ninth grade freshman teacher, and you're a little unsure about how students are going to handle a sensor on their own. It works well to do in stations where you can kind of be with the sensor, make sure that they're using it safely. And I would say in my 5 or 6 years of teaching grades 9 through 12, I've never had a major safety issue with the sensors. They've all, for the most part, made it through unscathed.
We try hard to make our probes student proof. I don't know that
Mhm.
there is such a thing as student proof, but we try hard.
Yeah, I mean they do get dropped, but
Yeah. Oh yeah.
they're a little bit like Nokia phones.
we these sensor carts we really love, and the first prototype that they gave to us, the very first thing we did with it was just roll it off a tabletop and crash it to the floor and make sure that it survived that, because if it didn't, no thank you. One thing you might do if you only have one, like only one kind of probe or whatever, or one of a kind sort of probe, is to do a demo where you collect data as a class, sort of thing at the front of the classroom, project it up like we showed at the beginning there. That can be an easy way. I think it's always better to have real data to talk about. It's great that when you got a textbook and you can see everything idealized, they have these pretty graphs for you. It's another thing to see the data coming in live, even if that is just up front there, and to talk about all those little things that might affect what you're seeing there, all the experimental method and experimental technique and those sorts of things. Those are really valuable conversations to have, and something that you miss if you're just using simulations or just images and stuff from the book.
Mhm. I'll say one thing I'll do too is I'll take screenshots of the data that we've collected in class and I'll use those on my assessments. So it's, not just grabbing, pictures of data from the internet, right? It's okay, this is like data we've actually used. We talked about in class, we analyzed in class, let's see how you can analyze it on your own.
Yeah. Excellent. Let's talk a little bit about funding. So there are lots of places you can get it. You can find funding. We have a grant resources page that you're welcome to peruse. Nick, you want to talk a little bit about what you've done in the past?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we got started with like a big one-time grant that our district was able to procure. I'll say when I've done funding on my own, it hasn't necessarily been for veneer equipment, but I've had successful GoFundMe's. And I would say the thing that made them successful is just like a really clear statement, like a really clear, like this is exactly what I'm getting. Here's how I'm using my curriculum. Um, social media is super helpful. Was able to just get a lot of, donations from people I didn't know, some donations from people I did know. But it just kind of helps when it's, setting your goal kind of low. Um, this is exactly the number that I want. And then this year, I was trying to get into some more projects. So, for our electrical units, we're doing kind of an HVAC project, and it like requires us building like a HVAC training board that will use some of the vernier electrical probes to help us test. So for that, I'm actually reaching out to local businesses, local HVAC companies. So for that, just setting out a really clear statement of purpose. I gave my example letter that I sent out to some businesses, and they've been able to donate some funds and donate some expertise. So I just think that there is a lot of untapped resources just around you. If you are able to go to some of your local businesses and just say like, hey, we really want to do this. I know this is kind of your area of expertise. Would you be willing to like come in and speak to it, or maybe provide some funding, even if it's like $100? $100 can go a long way in the classroom setting.
When I was in the classroom, there were a couple of times we got some money from professional groups that were nearby. I was fortunate enough to teach in an area that had lots of like defense contractors, big corporations like that. That if you asked the right person, it was likely you were going to get some money. But it's likely that even smaller professional organizations around you often have some sort of, philanthropy goals and that sort of thing. And if you give them an easy way to help you, it's likely that they'll want to help you. I linked to this grant resources page on the Vernier website. You'll see there are a number of things there. One thing that's about like writing a grant can be kind of intimidating the first time you do it. So there is a grant writing guide up there that can be helpful to kind of like get you started, like help you figure out what you're going to say and how you're going to say it. I think the first time you do this, it can be a little intimidating, but it gets easier. The first time's always the hardest. Yeah, I don't think, are there any questions at this point, or especially outstanding questions that we haven't answered yet? I'm gonna scrolling through the chat here. Oh, here we go. I'm gonna quick copy and paste these license keys into the chat. The Graphical Analysis Pro license key is just science on a budget -GA August 25. The Vernier video analysis license key is really just like you really want the whole link, that'll open it in a browser tab. It runs best in Chrome. I think it'll also run in Edge if I remember right, and Safari. There's someone is asking about a physics lab book. We have a variety of physics labs. The books that I showed here, these are written specifically for Vernier video analysis, but we have another book that's called Physics with Vernier, which is kind of like our core, physics book. The labs in it are okay. They tend to be a little bit cookbooky, but they're a great place to start. I found that with my own students, I would do those labs. The first time I did a lab, I would just do it as written in the book. And then afterwards, I would tweak it a little bit to make it fit my sequence and scope a little bit better. And the next year, I'd run it again, and I would probably end up tweaking it again a couple more times as we did it. Those books you can find on our website. If you just go to vernier.com, and there is if you go to the store, there's an option here for lab books, and you can see all of those. That's probably the easiest place to go. And then, yeah, you can see like here's the food chemistry book and so on and so forth. Let's see. So it looks like a question about transitioning away from Logger Pro. So we have a piece of software called Logger Pro. It's been around for a long time. It's actually the piece of Vernier software that I used when I was in the classroom. It is slowly fading into the sunset. It's old enough now that we've stopped updating it. And so we're encouraging folks to try transitioning to graphical analysis. You'll find that physics teachers tend to like Graphical Analysis Pro because of the advanced analysis features that you don't get in just the basic version of graphical analysis. Because it's a site license, if somebody in your school wants to buy the Pro license, everybody gets the Pro license, so to speak. If your physics teachers use the video analysis tools within Logger Pro, they'll probably also want Vernier video analysis. And you can buy the two bundled together. You end up with two license keys, and you save a little bit by bundling them together. If they don't really use the video analysis tools in Logger Pro, it's probably they won't miss them in graphical analysis. So that's just something to follow up with them, We find that most folks, the transition from Logger Pro to graphical analysis or video analysis, it's not a hard transition. The new apps are pretty user-friendly, and they're designed kind of with more that's like a modern app. Logger Pro was created 25 years ago in a different kind of era of computing, and the new apps feel much more modern, and they kind of work the way you would expect a modern app to. All right. Well, thank you all for being here. Oh, I don't want to forget, Dylan's going to do a giveaway here.
Yes. So as we were chatting, I went ahead and put everyone's names into a random name generator. And today's winner is Maria O. So congratulations, Maria. I am going to go ahead and email you. I just need some shipping information. Or actually, I think you won a gift certificate. So I will just email you about how to collect that. So keep an eye out for an email from somebody at vernier.com. I'll send it in about 10 minutes. So if you don't see it, check your spam, and congratulations.
All right. One last question. Can students download the free version of GIA in their Chromebooks? Yes, there's not like a download version. You just go in the Chrome browser and you type in graphicalanalysis.app, and it will load the free version right within the Chrome browser. There was one other question there. Ali, I'll follow up with you via email about the difference between LabQuest 2 and LabQuest 3. Thank you again, everyone, for being here.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, all.